And here we are. So decided to go live. Well, I was honestly, I was watching the Pacers, but Pacers right now are kind of like a G League team. So, and the Golden State Warriors are kind of treating it like it's a intramural game, which is good, I guess, but it doesn't really make for very interesting basketball sometimes. But um, breaking news tonight is that the Senate Democrats have caved, despite overwhelming support on Tuesday and from voters and the public themselves. The Senate Democrats have decided to throw in the towel, cave, betray their voters, betray their base, um, all the things that you could possibly imagine that are terrible political decisions. They just totally did. It's almost like they have no. Honestly, it's almost like they're an opposition party in name only, and they're literally taking their direction from Trump himself. It's bizarre, the political calculation that had to have been done on this to for anyone of any ounce of political acumen or to even think this is a good idea. So we're gonna get the video on here as they are waiting for one final vote. I apologize. So I'm not going to go into the audio here yet, but I believe they're waiting for one Republican to show up to vote. And just to give a little bit of an explainer on what this is. So um, the what they're voting on is called cloture, and I'm sure everybody's heard of the term filibuster, especially as it relates to the Senate, and that this is something that is baked into Senate rules. It's something that President Trump has called on the Republicans to get rid of, to do filibuster. Um, but it is something that's usually adopted in all new Senate rules. Whenever the new Congress is convened, they vote on a set of rules, and the filibuster is usually included in the Senate rules. So, what is the filibuster? In some bizarre kind of agreement, or when the Senate first convened on rules, they most bills pass on a simple majority, 51-49. Bill passes. However, in a twist or quirk of the rules, it requires a supermajority in order to end debate. So when bills are being voted on or anything else, there by Senate rules and Constitution there must be a period of debate on the merits and what the bill entails, and the debate continues indefinitely until cloture is voted on. Cloture is simply a term for ending debate on a particular subject. So what they're voting on is to end the debate on the continuing resolution to fund the government. So what does this mean in general terms is that they are voting right now to end debate, and in order to vote to end debate, it requires 60 votes. Then the continuing resolution can then be voted on, and it can pass on a simple majority, 51-49. But in order to end debate, it has to be 60. That is the filibuster. If you can prevent the vote on cloture, then obviously you cannot hold a vote on the bill. So that is what is typically referred to as the filibuster. So what exactly happened? Well, from what I've been able to see, and I'm still looking at some of this. is the Senate Democrats essentially um, have voted to end debate, have agreed to vote to end debate for a promise that the Senate will vote on the Affordable Care Act subsidies sometime in December. Now, why this is a horrifically bad idea from a political standpoint is that not only have they implicitly admitted that at any time they could have voted to fund the government, so they immediately shot themselves in the foot politically on all their rhetoric and them actually being successful for once on placing the blame on the administration and the Republicans for the shutdown. Now it's a tacit admission that at any time they could have done this. They could have funded the government. They could have voted the government. They could have voted for cloture and passed a continuing resolution. They also gave up all bargaining chips because they are not, one of their demands has always been we hold a vote on funding Affordable Care Act subsidies before we vote on the continuing resolution. They gave that up. They just like gave that up for a promise to hold a vote on it in the Senate, just in the Senate. So the Affordable Care Act subsidies, if they hold a vote in the Senate and somehow the Democrats get it passed in December, would still need to go to the House, and Mike Johnson can simply not bring it to a vote. So they traded away all their leverage, all the momentum, and everything else for essentially nothing, nothing at all. Um, a lot of Democratic members of Congress, some of the newly electeds, are already going bonkers over this complete and total capitulation. Honestly, Chuck Schumer might be the worst Senate Majority Leader that we've had in decades. The guy is feckless. He's clueless. I don't want to say he's clueless. I mean, he obviously knows what he's doing. He just doesn't have a spine. He's definitely not. And I say this as a supporter of the Democratic Party at this time, that this is the worst possible outcome. And Chuck Schumer did the same thing last spring. Uh, gave away all his leverage for a nebulous promise that they immediately laughed at him and said, "Yeah, we're not going to do this. Thanks for your vote." And he goes right back to it. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown in the football. It's honestly kind of ridiculous that this man is still in a leadership position. He's ancient. He barely understands social media. He barely understands the political climate that they're in. And whenever he tries to sound like he's doing something, it is very embarrassing for him. I don't think he understands that when he does these things, they're embarrassing for him. We're not like, yeah, it's. I don't want to say cringy because I just used that on a previous video, so I'm trying to come up with something else to turn like secondhand embarrassment for him, and he doesn't get it is as close as I can come. This is epically bad for the Democratic Party. The voters on Tuesday gave them as big a backing and just their support. Voters gave the Democratic Party their support on what they're doing. Finally, they're fighting back. Finally, they're doing something to end or at least put some brakes on what is going on. And they immediately turn around a few days later and they're like, "Nah, we're good. We're out of there. We're out of here." For a promise to hold a vote that is absolutely meaningless. And to explain why that is meaningless, there is nothing. The Republicans just agreed to hold a vote. Frankly, they could just say we're not even going to hold the vote, and after they vote here, they could do that. It would the Democrats would have nothing. But even then, they don't have anything. They just agreed to hold a vote in the Senate. I mean, that is absolutely meaningless in the grand scheme of things because any one, the Democrats probably won't win that vote, and two, if they somehow win that vote on ACA subsidies, it would have to go to the House, and there's no way the House. I mean, it won't pass the House. So they gave up all their leverage, they gave up all their power, they gave up all their bargaining position for a meaningless vote that may or may not happen. That is how ineffective Chuck Schumer is as a leader. It is mind-boggling the bad political decisions that this man has made and continues to make. Right back to him writing a strongly, again, when he went out and said he's writing a strongly worded letter. Get with the times, man. Seriously, like, find a spine, find some strength somewhere, because you look weak, you look ineffectual, and Republicans are steamrolling over you. I'm sure they're not even there to, I mean, they need one more vote, and I'm sure they're not there because the Republicans look to be in caucus right now, and they're probably just holding a big laugh. Hell, Fetterman might even be in there with them, for all I know. That dude has turned the corner and gone off several rails. But yeah, this is epically bad for the Democrats. It is they're taking the mandate and the political win that they just had Tuesday, and they're totally throwing it away. I would not be surprised if many of them, whoever voted for this, are will be primaried. I mean, that's a definite. They will absolutely be primaried, and they deserve to be because this is beyond a betrayal of their voters, and there's really no other way to put it. Um, I guess one of the go look here. One of the Democrats who voted for this. Yes, we'll. So here's the Democrat senators that voted for this. Uh, Jean Shaheen, she's retiring. Fetterman, I would probably say, if I had to make a guess, that if somehow in the midterms Democrats take control of the Senate, he will probably flip to be a Republican. Just a guess. Angus King surprises me, but he is an independent that only caucuses with the Democrats. He's not actually part of the Democratic Party. Um, Masto is kind of surprising. Jackie Rosen is kind of surprising. Durbin is retiring as well, so he's kind of a sacrificial lamb on this. Tim Kaine, that one is surprising. I mean, he ran with Hillary on Hillary's ticket. Um, I don't know much about Hassan. It's kind of surprising that any Fetterman I can see. Durbin, he's retiring. Um, Probably there's I don't want to impugn anybody, but this is politics. So if I had to guess, I'd say there's probably something on the back end involved. Shaheen is retiring as well, and that is probably where that kind of calculation came from. Is I'm sure there's a think tank position or something along the lines promised downstream of this vote after they retire. But I had to guess, but it seems likely. I mean, that's usually how this thing goes. I had seen that Sheen gave a speech or kind of a tried to explain her vote, and I'm going to look for that right now. Is that seems really stupid? Oh yeah.
This is a capitulation. You're putting together, you're agreeing to.
Hold on, I'll go back to that.
Become law, and you're allowing that to happen.
Well, first of all, there was, as long as the government shut down, the clear statement from Senator Thune and the Republican majority, and they control the Senate, the House, the White House, was we will not talk about health care with you. So there was no vote that we were going to get on the Affordable Care Act, premium tax credits. We have a guaranteed vote by a guaranteed date on a bill that we will write. Not that the Republicans will write, although I do think it's important for us to engage with them because we need a bipartisan bill that we know is going to get enacted to provide the relief that Americans need. And I think there's a commitment on the part of many of our colleagues to do that.
But there's no guarantee it will become law.
There was never a guarantee that it would become law.
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna look for the longer version of that because if you don't follow politics, then you would know that sounds reasonable, but essentially she just said some of the dumbest shit possible. There's no guarantee. One, they can write whatever bill they want. There's no guarantee that Thune's going to bring it to the floor after they get their vote here. In fact, the previous time that they negotiated something like this, the Republicans just flat out didn't hold the vote. So you can't trust them because if you've ever negotiated before on anything, then you understand that there has to be a certain level of trust that the other party will abide by the terms. If there is no trust and you can't trust the other party to negotiate in good faith, then there's no reason to negotiate at all. And that's exactly what she's implying, like the Republican Party, having already backed out of several deals, is somehow negotiating in good faith on this one. So she's just flat out lying right there in front of everybody that somehow, we're going to have a vote on a bill that we're going to write. And then, as if that's some kind of win. Then, when the reporter asks her, or states, like, this was, there's no guarantee that this will even become, get passed, she said, well, there was no guarantee it was going to get passed ever. Okay, that's legitimately, she's just invalidating her previous statement. It's basically a logical fallacy. She's saying, like, well, whatever, at least we can write the bill and they have to vote on it, but they don't have to. And there was no guarantee that that would be passed anyway, so why go through this? You're giving up your only negotiating position and your only lever of power for something that is a gesture at best. And that's only if they agree to allow you to have the gesture. If the Republicans don't want to go on record on voting against whatever bill the Democrats write in December, they don't have to. They never have to bring it to a vote. And then what? We go through this in January? Well, you get one shot at this type of thing. If they pass a continuing resolution that funds the government until the end of January, and then the Democrats come back in January and shut the government down again, or the government shuts down again because they will not vote for the continuing resolution because the Republicans didn't uphold their end of the bargain to hold a vote in December, that's too complicated. The public will not back them. The blame will fall on them. It would be a political miscalculation of epic proportions to do this again in January. Because at that point, you've lost all goodwill amongst your constituency, and people will not back you. Jeanne Shaheen essentially just stated a bunch of gibberish that equates to, this is too hard for me. And she tried to act tough about it and kind of get lippy with the reporter. And it just, she's lying right there. She knows she has betrayed her voters. She knows she's betrayed her base, and she doesn't give a fuck. That's essentially what it is. Well, it wasn't going to pass anyway. There was no guarantee a bill would pass anyway. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's why you can't vote for this. If they won't negotiate and they're taking the blame for the government shutdown, then why would you bail them out this way? It makes zero political sense. It is the dumbest thing. It shows the political acumen of a high school debating society. And she's trying to act like this is some big, like she negotiated some big deal or something. No, she just totally screwed the pooch. Well, we got some movement here on the Senate floor. I'm not sure who they're waiting on here. I know it is Republican because the Democrats have already voted, so I mean this is going to pass. Cloture, and then I would assume I don't think they'll hold a voice vote. They're probably going to, for sure, do something along the lines of I'm sure they're going to have a recorded vote on this. But again, this is the vote to invoke cloture is to essentially end debate on the topic. It requires 60 votes, a supermajority, or more than half anyway. And it is essentially a vote to end debate. That's what the filibuster is. It's the cloture. And once they invoke cloture on the matter of the continuing resolution, and I'm assuming Republicans and Zoom will immediately hold it. Again, they probably won't do it by voice vote, even though I think technically they could. I think they're going to want a recorded vote. And that means, so they'll vote on the continuing resolution, I imagine right after this. And then that is what will fund the government. Now, key point here, though, is that it has to go to the House. So the House will have to reconvene in order to vote on the continuing resolution. So this vote on cloture will then go to a vote on the continuing resolution. That will just can pass on a simple majority, 51-49. Then it would go to the House, and the House would have to reconvene because I believe that part of the negotiation for the Democrats to vote cloture included some changes to the continuing resolution. That would necessitate it to go back to the House. I'm still going to look for, I guess Bernie Sanders gave a very fiery speech. Blue Sky and Democrats are absolutely melting down on this. Fetterman gave some stupid response. So Hassan, when I'm just reading this here, apparently Senator Hassan asked, "What will happen if Republicans don't carry out the deal?" Well, shame on them. Wow, that is epic levels of cool. Here was Bernie Sanders earlier. I do think it's important to see this one.
Because I think it is important that the American I understand that the way the process has been developed, it is impossible to delay the votes that are going to take place. And if that were not the case, that is certainly what I would do, because I think it is important that the American people fully understand what is being voted on today. Everybody in America knows that our current healthcare system is broken. It is dysfunctional. It is cruel. It is by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and the only healthcare system of any major country that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right, covering every man, woman, and child. We are unique in that respect. And yet tonight, what this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse. So let's be clear what this vote is about. If this vote succeeds, over 20 million Americans are going to see at least a doubling in their premiums in the Affordable Care Act. In my state of Vermont and throughout this country, for certain groups of people, it will be a tripling and a quadrupling of their premiums. There are people who will now be paying 50% of their limited incomes for health care. Does anybody in the world think that makes sense? And if this resolution is passed tonight, we are on a pathway to throw 15 million Americans off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. 15 million. Our job is to create universal health care, guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child, not throw 15 million people off the health care they have, low-income and working-class people. And my friends, know what you are voting on. Studies are out there that when you throw 15 million people off of health care, some 50,000 of our fellow Americans will die unnecessarily every single year. Anyone think that's funny? Something to laugh at? Something to just go past? I don't. 50,000 Americans die unnecessarily. Now, I know.
Yeah, that's I mean, he's not wrong. I don't think the healthcare debate has been ongoing in this country forever. I will say my personal experience is that my wife does not have insurance. My insurance does not cover her, that I get through my work, and we have had experience with the ACA exchanges, and he's not necessarily wrong. It's hideously expensive. It is a significant chunk of our income. Um, I'm not saying that universal healthcare is the answer. I don't know if it is or not. I think the numbers would indicate that it is, based on just a general reading of what the benefits and minuses are of a. I personally was more of a fan of Medicare as an option that you could purchase. Um, so Medicare for all who want it. I think that was Pete Buttigieg's.
Mr. Corn and I.
Here we go. There it is. Okay, so Cornine was they were waiting on him. He just voted yay, and so cloture has been invoked. And now I am assuming that Thune and they will return to the Senate chamber to vote on the continuing resolution. At some point, I'm sure they will. It's going to happen for sure, 100%. Or maybe they just want to go home. I don't know. Maybe they'll have it on Monday.
On this vote, the yeas are 60 and the nays are 40. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn, having voted in the affirmative, the motion upon reconsideration is agreed to.
Okay, so cloture has just been invoked. Debate on the continuing resolution has ended, and now they can proceed to a vote. So let's talk real quick the implications on this. I will say this: it's going to be an interesting little byplay of what's going to happen here. Mike Johnson will now have to convene the House back into session, unless the Republicans pull a fast one here and they pass the continuing resolution as is, and they ignore whatever they just negotiated with Democrats on. So, I mean, that could be some drama we'll see here tonight, because the Democrats can't take this vote back. I mean, this it's now done. They've folded. There's no take backsies. Whatever the Republicans decide to do from here on out, it can pass with a simple majority. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I had read that the Democrats had, through Thune, had agreed to add some things, specifically that anybody that Donald Trump fired during the shutdown would be rehired, and that back pay would be paid for those that were furloughed due to the government shutdown. That would have to be added into this bill. And if it is, then when they vote it through, it would have to go to the House, and the House would have to vote on it as well. That would require Mike Johnson to reconvene the House, and at that point, he would have to swear in Adelita Grijalva, who won her special election in Arizona. Now, what does that mean? She would be the 218th vote on the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. So maybe the Democrats weren't so stupid after all. Who am I kidding? Yeah, they were, but there may still be something to salvage out of this. However meager that might be, this is the Epstein file release is something that, everyone, I think everyone, all sides of the political spectrum believe that should be released, except for like Mike Johnson and probably people who are on the fucking list, right? I mean, if you're in the files, obviously you don't want them released. So why are they fighting the release of the Epstein files so hard? Like, they've literally done everything possible to stop the release of the Epstein files. And now I had read that some leaking is on what's in the files has started to come from the Department of Justice, and apparently there's hard drives full of photos and videos, and whatever it is has spooked a lot of Republicans, because the DOJ apparently privately briefed some Republican Party members on what is in the files, and now it looks like we are a couple steps closer from the Epstein files being released. Now, the ball, assuming the Republicans don't screw the Democrats over here, and they actually do change this, they actually do change the continuing resolution, then it goes back to the House, and Mike Johnson has a decision to make. He can not convene the House and keep the government shut down, in which case it falls squarely on him, or he reconvenes the House and the Epstein files are released. It's an interesting decision. I wonder how he will choose. But given the fact that they've done damn near everything but start a war to stop the Epstein files from being released, I am going to predict, and I could very well be wrong, I'll find out here pretty soon, I predict that Republicans are going to renege on whatever agreement they made with the Democrats, and they're going to pass the continuing resolution without changes so that it goes into effect without Mike Johnson having to reconvene the House. We will see if I'm right. In the meantime, I am for sure going to check my bet. Hey, I mean, it's a live stream, but yeah, everybody has to have a fallback plan. Okay, could really use a Jalen Warren touchdown. Just saying. Cloture has been passed. We're moving on to the next step here. So again, if you're just joining this or following this, Corenine was the final vote. He was the 60th vote to invoke cloture, which will lead to a vote on the continuing resolution to fund the government. And we are eagerly awaiting to see if Republicans are going to back out of whatever deal. If they do back out, that means that the government just reopens. The House does not need to reconvene. Adelita Grijalva can stay unseated, and the Epstein files are safe. If Republicans follow through on what they agreed to, then there will be some alterations to the continuing resolution. It will have to go back to the House, and the House will have to reconvene in order to reopen the government. At that point, then Mike Johnson has a decision to make, and a pretty significant decision to make at that. I'm assuming something's going to be. I'm going to check some news here. See if there's anything new. Oh, Bernie just released a video about 50 minutes ago about this. We'll go take a look there while we wait for the Senate to reconvene. Everybody's favorite
vote. Tonight, 8 Democrats voted with the Republicans to allow them to go forward on this continuing resolution. And to my mind, this was a very, very bad vote. What it does, first
For the record, we just made Grandpa very mad.
First of all, is it raises healthcare premiums for over 20 million Americans by doubling, and in some cases tripling or quadrupling. People can't afford that when we are already paying the highest prices in the world for healthcare. Number two, it paves the way for 15 million people
to be thrown off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Studies show that will mean that some 50,000 Americans will die every year unnecessarily. And all of that was done to give.
Now, I believe that COVID, whatever your politics on COVID and whatever your thoughts, that the pandemic definitely, think of that statement there, 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily every year. All right. 10 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. You would have had, people would be aghast. They'd be talking about it all the time. Like, we're just going, like 50,000 Americans will die every year and they don't need to because of this vote and everything else. I think the pandemic kind of broke us of that. And when I say that is, I think most of us probably lost someone in the pandemic, and we have definitely become, let's say, calloused to those type of statistics. Yeah, so
$1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. As everybody knows, just on Tuesday, we had an election all over this country. And what the election showed is that the American people want us to stand up to Trumpism, to his war against working class people, to his authoritarianism. That is what the American people wanted, but tonight, that is not what happened. So we've got to go forward, do the best that we can to try to protect working class people, to make sure that the United States not only does not throw people off of health care, but ends the absurdity of being the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. We got a lot of work to do. But to be honest with you, tonight was not a good night. Thank you.
okay, Grandpa is very disappointed in us. For sure. Yeah, I got a lot of "I'm disappointed in you, son" kind of vibes off that one. For sure. I mean, he's not wrong. I wish he'd have more energy. I mean, I get it. He's been fighting it for a very long time. I wish he had some more vitriol for the 8 Democrats that voted for this, because they kind of just sunk the entire Democratic kind of strategy on this. Just torpedoed it out of the water. And when something like that happens, there should be some consequences. Just looking at any recent news here to see. Yeah, so definitely the younger generation of Democratic politicians are definitely fighting back on this. I think this is probably not good news for these Democratic senators. Oh, here's more of a suspended team.
Wants to extend the ACA tax credits more. And this is only the first step. So let me be clear. No one in the Senate chamber wants to extend the ACA tax credits more than I do. I introduced that legislation in 2019. I fought successfully to pass it in 2021 and 2023, and I'm 100% committed to getting this done. And this is only the first step. So let me be clear. No one in the Senate.
Yeah, you're full of shit. Yeah, so Shakeen is the sacrificial lamb they sent out there to explain this vote, and she failed miserably. Because what she's, I mean, yeah, get heated. Wow, you supported the ACA, you introduced it in 2019, and it is functionally a dead legislation at this point. Through regulation, through defunding, the ACA has been gutted, and now all the good parts are essentially gone, and all the bad parts remain. So all that's really left of the ACA is the pre-existing condition exemption. I'm sure that if the Trump era has taught us anything, it's that guardrails are only as good as the enforcement mechanism. And if the enforcement mechanism is dependent on the person who's committing the violations, then any enforcement is essentially meaningless. For instance, ombudsmen, inspectors generals, those were always intended to rein in and find instances of malfeasance within any committee or anything else or department, but nobody ever considered the fact that the president can simply fire them and then not hire the position. Now there's no enforcement mechanism. So when we look at what's left of the ACA, if the pre-existing conditions is really the only thing that's kind of the good part that's kind of left after all this, then how is that? What is there left to enforce? Who is enforcing that? Who is going to hold insurance companies to account if they deny coverage due to a pre-existing condition? Lawyers? The government? Okay, well, the Department of Justice is functionally, I mean, they could just say we're not, hey, privately tell every insurance company, look, start denying people coverage and we won't care. We're not going to enforce it. So realistically, the pre-existing condition part of it, we might as well consider dead. The ACA as a whole at this point, you could probably, without the subsidies, all that's left are the bad parts. So we could kind of just consider that legislation and the ACA to be dead at this point. Again, I think as far as a silver lining to this, maybe, is that the House will have to reconvene. Adelita Grijalva will have to be sworn in. She can assume her seat, and she is the 218th vote on the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. So if there's any slight silver lining to what has happened here tonight, it is that the Epstein files might finally get released. And we can at least start having an accounting for that. And I think we as a country deserve that at a minimum. So hopefully the Republicans don't play any shenanigans. Now, there is a way they could skirt this. Again, I mentioned this a few minutes back, but if they just pass a continuing resolution without any of the changes that the Democrats requested in exchange for their vote, then it just goes into effect. The House does not have to reconvene, and they don't have to seat Adelita Grijalva, and they can keep the Epstein files sealed. And wouldn't that be fucking interesting? See, they're still there, so they're clearly going to hold a vote on the continuing resolution. They just haven't yet. I think this is probably one of those things that they want to do the dirty deeds in the dark. So, oh, and for the record, I can't. I was watching the Pacers game before this, and yeah, they got. So this has been a very bad, very, very bad evening for the Democrats. Frankly, for the Republicans too, because I think a lot of them are spineless. But you know, it's really disappointing that we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the United States, and we've gone from a group of people that were willing to face death and to be executed as traitors to this. Both parties are spineless. Let's make that clear. Both parties are spineless. The Senate Republicans certainly know that they have completely abandoned their constitutional duty as a co-equal branch of government. They absolutely know that. Most of them are constitutional lawyers, for crying out loud. They have the best education that this country can provide. Most of them are from Harvard Law, and they certainly know what their obligations are to this country and this government, and that is to be a check on executive power. And they have totally abandoned that responsibility. Make no bones about it. Now, tonight, the Democrats are absolutely failed this country. I mean, they have. They failed their constituents. They failed the party. They failed all the people, all the government employees that have gone through hell for over a month. They have totally betrayed. And Shaheen can stand up on a podium and act all fucking offended that somebody is actually calling her out on it or something like that. But Shaheen damn well knows all those government employees that got furloughed, that have been through some of the most trying times, not once, but almost twice this year. And she totally betrayed them. And she can act all offended and everything else all she wants up there on the podium. She caved. She has a spine of a jellyfish. And the only reason she's doing this is because she's retiring. If she actually had to face a primary challenge or an election, there's no way she'd be doing this. Because it's what she just did is political freaking poison. He should be like, but I'm sure she's negotiated her parachute as director of some think tank or something, or on the board of some company that will greatly benefit from this vote today. Because that's how it works. That's how they roll. Does that absolve the Republicans from what they've done? Of course not. And I think that is the hell that is probably, if you're a Democratic senator, particularly in this current media environment, you take all the heat, and then people yell at you because you don't save us from Republicans' bad decisions, but Republicans are never held to task on it. Make no mistake, our legislature has abandoned their constitutional duty. They have violated their oath of office. Now, some of them haven't. Bernie Sanders, there's a few out there that haven't. Shockingly, Rand Paul has not. He's not abandoned his constitutional duty. Marjorie Taylor Greene, shockingly, has not. So there are some in the legislature.
Going to ask for its first reading.
Oh, here we go.
Clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S 3168, a bill to appropriate funds for pay and allowances of federal employees and so forth and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I now ask for a second reading. In order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I object to my own request.
Objections heard. The bill will be read for a second time in the next legislative day.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 11 a.m. on Monday, November the 10th. Following the prayer and pledge, the general proceedings be approved today. The morning hour be deemed expired. The time for the two leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. And the Senate resume consideration of the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, post-cloture. Finally, that all time during recess, adjournment, morning business, and leader remarks count post-cloture on the motion to proceed.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, if there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order.
Senate stands adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay, so there it is. They are not going to hold the vote today, tonight. I'm not sure on the language on some of that, but it sounds like they're going to move directly to a vote without amendment. So the Republicans, I think I might be right, and we'll certainly see tomorrow, but I think the Republicans just screwed the Democrats again. Because there were some provisions that were supposed to be added to it that would have necessitated it going back to the House of Representatives, and it does not look like they are intending to do that. So that definitely means that tomorrow is going to be pretty rocky. And I'm not sure that the Democrats are really going to survive this one. Nor really should they. Like I said, I think the legislature has essentially abandoned their constitutional duty. That is to be a check on executive power. And they are... It's actually kind of funny. Bit of history. Madison and Jefferson both, when writing the Constitution, understood that they spoke about the dangers of a political party. They were highly against it, yet they made no provisions in the Constitution banning political parties, partly because it would go against the spirit of the First Amendment and freedom of association. But the hell of it is, Madison and Jefferson both created the first political parties. Go figure. And they did warn the idea that the separation of powers is what will keep, the United States intact, co-equal branches of government, that because humans being humans, nobody would willingly give up their authority and power to another person for nothing, essentially. Yet that's what a political party does. A political party could always circumvent and short circuit the separation of powers. It just, in 200 plus years, it just never really happened to the extent that it has now. And at this point, the legislature has totally abrogated their responsibility and handed it over to the executive, which was never the intention in the Constitution. It's actually a violation, essentially, of their duties to the Constitution and the United States. That being said, this was obviously a bad night for Democrats, and with that, I'm going to shut the stream off as there's going to be no new news, and we'll see what tomorrow may bring. Have a good night, YouTube and Twitch. You seem to be viewing on there.